there are going to be three presentations. One made by Mr. Sarandhar, first one will be made by me, and the second one will be made by him. And we would be having shortly Mr. Chandwani from ICICI Venture, who have recently made a major investment in Tebma Shipyard. So he'll be coming and discussing about how has been their experience and how do they look at it. Of course, he mentioned that he wouldn't like specifically to discuss. He would not discuss the particular investment Tebma, but in general he would talk about how's the sector, etc. So while we're waiting for him, I thought we can start and take it. And I'll give you my introduction, and probably Sarandhar would talk about what his background is and what he represents as far as the shipbuilding sector is concerned. Then after that, I'll commence my presentation, and meanwhile probably Sumit will join, and we'll go ahead with that. Subsequent to our presentations, we would have after that we'll have a tea break, or people will be served tea while they are here. And we are also launching a maritime monitor, which used to be a journal with us, but we have converted that into a business intelligence service. So we wanted to take this occasion to launch that service also. I'm director in i-maritime consultancy, and I'm a naval architect as well as in MBA graduate. Naval architect from IIT Madras and MBA from IIM Bangalore, and have been in this consulting for last 13 years. Before that, I used to work with SCICI, which was the lending institution, financial institution for the maritime sector, which is shipping, shipbuilding, etc. And many of the people would be familiar with that organization. And as the firm, our firm is India's largest maritime consulting firm, and we have done more than 250 projects across shipping, shipyards, ports, etc. And shipbuilding has been a focus area for all along, but the last 2 years there has been a great surge in the order book in the country. And as researchers, we have worked with government, we have worked with industry association, we have worked with different companies, new people who are setting up port project, shipbuilding project, and trying to understand how the industry would be, let's take 10 years from now. We have worked with several foreign countries, Norwegian especially, who have talked of getting into the sector in a major way. We're working with a Finnish company again, who would like to expand into the country. So our work involves a lot of forecasting, and as part of that, we realize that this shipbuilding sector is going to become a really mega sector in time to come. And the last trends have been showing that, and my presentation will talk about it. And but I would request Mr. Sarandhar to give a brief introduction of what he is going to cover, as well as himself and the organization he represents, and then I'll probably start my presentation. Yeah.
Good afternoon. My name is Dilip Sarandhar. I am from IRS. I am the Deputy Managing Director. I am a naval architect, also like him by profession. It's just a coincidence that we are here together. And I graduated from IIT Kharagpur in 1972. So nearly 35 years of experience I have. And barring the first 5 years which I spent in shipyard, Bascon Docks, that time it was building merchant ships also. And after that, since 77, I am with IRS in various capacities. And we have seen lot of problems to start with for IRS and for the Indian shipbuilding, and all through these many bad years, presently we are much more comfortable, very happy situation, and then it's nice to be in such a situation at the end of the career. But surely there are many young guys around who will take on this mantle and take our country to much greater heights. And we are here to discuss today what my presentation is going to be on what IRS can do to be a part of this this growth story which is coming, which ways we can help, and we have lots of things to talk about. There is a presentation during which I will touch upon a few points. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Sarandar. I'll start with my presentation now. Yeah. Okay, the first slide is about the current order book position of Indian shipyards. By the way, I mean, he's Anand and he's waiting for Chandwani Sumit to come, and I just requested him to be here. He's a naval architect, again from IIT Kharagpur, and has been in the field for a number of years for the shipbuilding side. And many of the things that you see actually are prepared by him. I'm only talking about them. So that's how it is. Now, if you look at it, current order book is close to $3.6 billion. And these are the value of order book which is there. The first one is as per the various shipyards. The second one is as per various segments, which is divided into domestic and export. And if you look at the private and PSU, again within domestic and export, you would get a picture. So we'll go with each of the tables. So if you see, the top 3 yards today are not the PSU yards; they are the public sector yards. In which, sorry, they are the private sector yards, in which Pipavav shipyard, though it is not commissioned, but already has a significant order book. And ABG is the largest yard as far as the order book is concerned. And but after that, Cochin, Alcock, and Hindustan, these are the 3 public sector yards which have order books of $300 million each. Now, 300 million is close to around 1,400 crores, 1,400–1,500 crores. While the top 3 are, ABG is close to more than 3,000 crores, same is the case with Pipavav, and Bharti is approximately 2,500 crores. Now, all this put together is only is 3.6. We had a word with L&T sometime back, and they were saying that by 2012, they would like to have shipbuilding contributing close to almost $1 billion of their turnover. Now, which means one single company out of these 9 or 10 companies, $1 billion. So it's not very difficult to imagine some of these yards contributing close to $500 million to $1 billion by 2012-15. That itself would put a revenue of the total industry to be close to $6 to $7 billion, and if you look at the order book, that will be a multiple of 2–2.5 times of that. So an interesting thing about this order book is that in last 5 years, the growth has been close to 5 times, and almost 60% CAGR, compounded annual growth rate. So which shows that the industry in last 5 years have grown by 60%. What we are assuming that industry would grow by 30%, and if it grows by 30% from this level in next 12 years, we are going to have close to $20 billion as the revenue which is there. We have done a comparison of shipbuilding with automobile sector. We have seen how the industry grew in other countries, in Korea, China, and we have seen that the similar parallels are there. In fact, interestingly, shipbuilding and automobile, they go hand in hand. Whichever country takes a forefront in automobile tend to do in shipbuilding very well. Japan was the case. Korea was again the case in which automobile and shipbuilding, they grew together. Same is a thing which is happening in China again. So in India, automobile sector has grown very well in last 10 years with a significantly higher CAGR. So we feel that the shipbuilding will also follow in the same loop. Now, this actually is not the full shipbuilding. India does maximum number of shipbuilding in the naval side, and this $3.6 billion, which is still 30%, because total naval order book is close to almost 10 to 12 billion dollars. I think Mazagon Docks itself is close to 30,000 crores, and all the yards put together, if you put all the defense yards, it will be 40,000 plus. So the total naval shipbuilding would be 3 times more that of what is there in the private sector. So put together, even today, we have close to 14-15 billion dollars worth of shipbuilding, and which is very big in my view. And it's just that the sector does not get reflected in the media. It does not get talked about. There is not very good lobbying facilities there, and that's where we need to come together and to really talk. If we look at the second table on the right, we see there was a time around 4 years back when domestic orders were more than export orders. But today, export orders are 3 times the domestic orders. And it's again a very interesting thing that how exports are becoming the growth drivers for the shipbuilding. It's possible that the shipbuilding or shipping cycle may not continue the way it is because we are at the peak of the cycle. But even then we feel exports would remain quite high. And if you look at the segments in which we are doing fairly well, is the offshore segment and the cargo ships, which are the relatively small cargo ships. While countries like China, Japan, Korea, they are more in the bigger segments, while India specializes in smaller crafts. And we feel like in automobile, India has become a global leader in small car. So it's possible to get a leadership position in small ships category, where the degree of sophistication is high. The equipments packages are more sophisticated, and the workmanship is much more involved. Probably Mr. Sarandar will talk more about these things. So the exports are driving the shipbuilding orders, and more sophisticated kind of ships are driving the shipbuilding, which is where India has an edge. Looking at the IT background, looking at in manufacturing also, we are doing very well in the engineering exports, which involve a lot of skills which otherwise are not available. So that's what we get from the second table. Now, if we come to the third table, which is the left hand corner, you see. When we look at the order book here, we see that as far as the domestic is concerned, the private and PSU, there is a balance between the two. But when we look at the export order, private sector is definitely is leading the way, and but private together is now almost 2.5 times of the PSU, which is again a new trend which has emerged. One is export, another is the private sector, then the highly more sophisticated kind of ships, and spread across the yards, which is quite even. So you have the 6 or 7 yards which are more than 300 million USD, which shows that each one of them has a potential of getting to $3 billion order book going forward as they increase their capacities and build up the infrastructure. So Bharti, Pipavav and ABB, they have very big plans to expand their facilities. Cochin and Hindustan Shipyard, they're modernizing their facilities and trying to make the best of what they have. Alcock Ashdown has started activities in a separate yard at Chanch, and TEPA is also looking at expanding. They've set up a new yard at Malpe. Apart from these, we have Choglays, and L&T is, of course, could become the biggest of all, if, and they have chosen to become very aggressive. So you can see we have close to 8 or 9 companies which have potential to have $1 billion plus order book in as early as maybe next 5 years. and that all will give rise to significant supply side of the shipbuilding. So current order book is close to 1.9 million DWT. If we do a compounded growth rate of 30% for next 12 years, it reaches to 44. It used to be 0.3 as around 5 or 6 years back. We have seen in last 5 years it has grown by almost 60% on a CAGR basis. If we say that within 5 years, if each of the previous yards would have close to $1 billion order book, if our MEG is already reaching there. So 5.4 is a very, very doable thing, because we have almost 7 or 8 yards which are inching towards this. Same thing goes. So this kind of growth rate overall we feel is quite possible. We have seen it across various sectors, and currently the global order book is of the order of 304 million DWT, which we are assuming that does not increase, because there has been a sizable growth in this in last 5 years. So even if it remains constant, another trend which is happening is the ships are getting more and more sophisticated. So in terms of CGT, the numbers will keep increasing, though in terms of DWT, the numbers may not really increase. So India's share, which is currently inching towards 1%, could become 15% in time to come, if we continue to be having this growth rate. And the deliveries, which are half of the order book, could reach almost 22 million DWT, which one DWT is equal to around $1,000. I mean, roughly. So we are talking of almost $20 billion worth of deliveries which could take place by 2020. Now, at some level, it looks a bit simple to assume that the compounded growth rate could remain at the same level in spite of the vagaries of the shipping market. It's possible that India may not be able to set up the capacity that it requires to set up. There could be several gaps in that, but what we are trying to say is that it is possible, and we need to get our act together as an industry to achieve these kind of targets. And China, for example, almost 6 to 7 years back, they set up the target that they will become the world's largest shipbuilding nation by 2015, having close to almost 30% of the global output. And they are on the verge of becoming that. Today, the order books in China has taken over Japan, which is very significant. China has become number 2 in terms of order book. Of the 304 million DWT, China is close to almost 80 million DWT. Korea is around 100 plus, and 82 is China, and 81 is Japan. So that itself shows that given a target and will to go ahead, it is possible to do that. And we feel that what China has done, India can also do, but slightly in a different way. China has gone into building large ships at a large scale, while we could get into more sophisticated ships, because that's where our expertise lies. And we can, using our IT expertise and the project management skills, we can get to the higher end of the shipbuilding and make more sophisticated tonnage, which are more value added rather than the low value work which China does. Yeah. So if we look at as a percentage of GDP, if GDP is growing by 8%, this could become as well around 1% of the GDP from 0.1% as we go forward. And this would mean a great deal to the total industrialization, as well as the contribution of the shipbuilding to the country as a whole. And this is important to talk about, because when we work with governments, we need to highlight that how important this sector could become in times to come. So if the output of shipbuilding is close to 1% of the GDP, then it's very significant. To give you an example, software today is roughly around 4%, 4.5% of the GDP. So there is a lot of attention which government gives to the software. So if we show these kind of targets which are possible, then definitely a lot more can be from the government. what I understand, probably Sumit will tell more, when the telecom revolution in India came because India government wanted to promote IT, and they felt the best way to do it is to have openness in the telecom sector. And so it's fortunately another thing happening. Steel and shipbuilding also, there is a large correlation, and steel sector is again poised for a big leap, especially in the eastern part of India, where large steel manufacturing capacities are coming up. And so steel, automobile, shipbuilding, there is a big correlation, and all the three things seems to be pointing in one single direction, that is upward in next 10 to 15 years. Now the total employment potential in the country is on the both the sector could be more than 2 lakh people. These are of course the direct employment, and the indirect employments could be 3 to 4 times more than that. So this could employ close to 1 million people. Again, comparing it with software, software also employs close to 1 million people, so this is a big number currently. I mean by 2020. Productivity, we have done a lot of work on productivity, and per ton, how many hours really go, what kind of ships take what kind of hours, and there would be a productivity improvement as we go forward. But as India makes more sophisticated ships, the number of hours may not dramatically reduce, but the value per hour would definitely increase substantially. This talks about the growth of the industry. Okay. See, currently, if you look at till 97, we were making smaller ships, inland barges, coastal tugs, etc. And all the yards like ABG, Alcock, Bharti, Chokle, they were involved. Cochin and Hindustan Shipyard, they were making large ships, but mostly domestic orders for PSUs. And but the delivery schedules were very bad, and we used to take a lot of time for delivery. But in 2002 to 7 onwards, certainly the order books have really surged, but we are doing smaller ships, and both local as well as global, but the numbers have increased substantially, and the total order books have become 5 times, 0.3 to almost 2 million DWT. But going forward, 2007 to next 4 or 5 years, more and more bigger ships are going to come, and we will get into the Handymax size in a major way. And again, the number of shipyards will be there. Here the TEPMA is should also be here, and so that these yards will become very prominent, and bigger vessels will be delivered. ABG and Bharti are setting up a bigger capacity. L&T and Pipavav are setting up greenfield capacity, and TEPMA is also already set up a greenfield capacity. And by 12 and 17, there are new players like Good Earth Maritime, which are coming at Cuddalore. L&T would also probably expand to multi-locations. Bharti, for example, has, I think, 5 yards in different locations. Then India will start making much bigger ships, probably 100,000 DWT plus. And beyond that, of course, we will get all kinds of ships, maybe LNG carriers and LPG carriers, the most sophisticated ships. So by 2020, India would have a range of offering which will be comparable to China, Korea, and Japan, Korea, and China, probably in that order. So if we talk at a corporate level, when we interact with companies and when we see what are their plans, it looks all plausible. Each one of them have drawn very ambitious plan. If one just sums up the plans of all these companies, it still looks like a big number to us. Now, this is the global order book and the risks which we have highlighted. If you look at it, the order books were of the order of 40 million DWT for quite some time. Then they grew to 80. But last 5 years, from 2001, where this was just above 100, have shot up to 300 million DWT. Now, shipping is cyclical. Probably that kind of sustenance may not be there. There would be a downturn. which when nobody knows, because this is unprecedented in the history of maritime for last 200 years, not even 50 or 100, that this kind of upsurge on a peak of the cycle continuously there for 4-5 years is unprecedented. It's also important for Indian shipyards to, or the capacity build-up, to see the downside. What happens if this 300 level comes to a 150 level? And if the global order book, so at one end we increase our capacity and build up the capacity in the yard, but one of the biggest risks is if the global demand itself tapers down and comes to a level of what it was in 2002, then what really happens? So we need to really prepare ourselves for that. But interestingly, we have seen, in economics there is a concept of Giffen goods. Giffen goods are those whose demand increased during depression. So like Indian IT sector, even when the IT meltdown took place in US, more and more companies shifted to India because of cutting cost. So it's possible that even in shipbuilding, we can become more like Giffen goods to the world, where we are producing ships at the cheapest price. In fact, if there is a downturn, it's possible that industry may start shifting from Japan, Korea. The reason why Europe lost edge in shipbuilding and the Far East got the edge was because of the cost factors. And China has built up capacity, and if they have another alternative to China, especially in a downturn, the best way to consolidate businesses in a downturn. So we feel that India should go ahead with their capacity plans, even if there is a downturn, and try to make the best of the downturn by creating shipbuilding infrastructure at a low cost, as well as delivering ships which are cheaper than what is happening in Japan and Korea. And there is a room for a large country like India to set up. India probably would have more naval architects, for example, than, Mr. Sarangan will clearly say, than probably China and Korea, or for that matter Japan. India probably would have the largest pool of naval architects. I don't know, am I correct? Which country would have the largest naval architect? Korea. Okay. But India would be what, number 2?
No, nowhere in this country.
Okay. But we have close to, I think, 1,500 naval architects which are there.
Korea produces more than 1,000 every year.
Oh. So all the more reason that we will discuss in the panel discussion that in case, in terms of the human resource development to achieve this kind of scale, what kind of things that we need to do to build up there. But the important thing is to understand the risks which are likely to be there, and try to address those risks at the design stage of our capacities, and be prepared for those downturns which are very notorious in shipping. Yeah. This is somewhat a comparison with the automobile sector. Component industry has crossed 10 billion. India is currently exporting around 300,000 automobile. By 2010, they are expected to do 1 million, and by 2015, the target is 3 million automobile to be exported out of India. If you look at India currently on the scale of size of ships and specialization, on the specialization side we are very ahead. We are equivalent to Norway. In fact, India is now number 2 or number 3 in terms of making offshore supply vessels. But most of them, they are small. Going forward, we feel that from here we'll move on to here, where we'll make the specialization we may reduce a little bit, but we will move in here in this space, and subsequently, without reducing the specialization level, we may move here and eventually come here where South Korea and Japan is there. So we could be better than China in terms of, so we could be large as far as the specialization is concerned, and we could move into the large segment. So actually it is possible to be given China. in terms of shipbuilding by following, moving up the value chain. So if you look at the technology and productivity, currently of course we have designs which are fully outsourced. By 2020 we feel there will be a lot of design firms. In fact, we have been approached by several companies to set up design units for them. Currently it is manual or semi-automated. So in the technology side, we feel the leaps and bounds, a lot of changes are bound to take place in terms of it. Our IT is the biggest strength. I mean, we have debated internally why India cannot be in terms of cost equal to China and in terms of automation and productivity equal to Japan. And it is definitely possible considering the kind of skill sets that the country has. Yeah. Now this is a complete order book of various yards. What we're going to do is we're going to circulate this presentation. Your cards are with us. We'll send you a copy of this presentation so you can have it as part of your database. So you can see the kind of variety of orders that have been. This list has been compiled from various sources. Clarkson's database, newspaper clippings, directly interacting with the companies. Yeah. Yeah. So this was a short presentation. What we are trying to say is that shipbuilding industry is going to become fairly big, and it is important that various participants in the industry, government people, the shipyards themselves, the financiers, all of them, they come together and see to that the goals of the industry are achieved. So I would request Sumit to introduce himself, and then Sarandar will give his presentation, then he can probably.
I am Sumit Chandani. I work as a director with ICICI Venture, which is India's one of the largest private equity funds. And we have recently invested into a shipyard. And I believe in an industry like shipbuilding, capital is of essence because it's a highly capital intensive industry. And you need investments and fairly large investments in this space. And you also need investors who are patient, who understand businesses, who understand business cycles, and who can bring forward their own expertise to the management team or the company. As Ramesh pointed out, for India to become a big shipbuilding nation, there are a lot of things that need to happen. And in order for those things to happen, it needs a very strong, I would say, effort. It's something like what the IT industry has done in a very successful way in terms of getting, starting with tax incentives to doing a very good job of marketing themselves, and their NASSCOM has done a phenomenal job. So I think the shipbuilding industry should think on those lines and say, how can we lobby more effectively, both within India and externally, and get all the benefits that the industry can to make it a big industry. And just a comment on the way India is today is I firmly believe that we need to encourage more manufacturing or capital goods kind of industries which employ a lot of people. Because one of the things that we've seen the skew in our GDP. We have agriculture, which contributes 20% of the GDP but employs 70% of people. And unless and until we encourage industries that are going to employ these blue collar workers, because at the end of the day, IT and BPO industry can only employ a certain kind of people who can speak English, who have IT skills. They can't employ a farmer, for example. Whereas what China has done very efficiently is they have moved people from farmlands into industries. And that's a process which is irreversible, has to happen, and India, for its own good, the government has to encourage industries like shipbuilding. Shipbuilding is one of them. They have to do that across a large number of manufacturing industries where people can actually move from giving up their agricultural activity and move into an industrial activity. And really, it's up to the shipbuilding industry to convey their case to the government and get whatever benefits they can get, and build a viable industry.
I have changed the title of the presentation from what is published there. But more or less the contents are what they were supposed to be. Next. So, Mr. Singhal has talked about the great opportunity which is there. It will benefit, if we achieve these targets, it will benefit a whole sector of industries. And one thing which is very definite is that all these various segments, stakeholders must work together. Otherwise, if somebody is lacking, some particular resource is lacking, it is going to be a problem in the entire cycle. So all of us must work together as a team. And certainly IRS is definitely very willing to join this team. So this presentation is about that particular aspect. What is our willingness and what we exactly propose to do. So IRS was formed in 1975, and 32 years of working we have had. In this process we have had a large capacity buildup, capacity in terms of technical ability. Also we employ largest pool of professionals, naval architects, marine engineers, electrical engineers, mechanical engineers, civil engineers, metallurgists, control engineers, all kind of people who are very essential for good shipbuilding to thrive. And what we have is with this pool together, working together, is we have a good setup, a platform you can say, which is very well developed, which is now able, which is capable of taking any new challenges, not only for IRS but for the industry as a whole. So if you have a problem which is connected with the shipping or marine activity, we are there to take on, because we have large funding for such activities, and it is not we are not looking at a business point of view. This IRS is meant to assist everything in Indian shipping and shipbuilding. So this platform exists and we must make use of it. Next slide, please. So these are 4 or 5 areas which we have highlighted here. One more. Apart from the ship classification, which is our usual main purpose of our organization, but we have identified these 4 areas: ship design, shipyard facilities and methods, ship construction, and human resource which is required to be able to get to these targets. We will see each one of these in a more detail. Okay, ship design. In this we can offer to be of assistance for ship design verification, special analysis which are required for large ships. We talked about small ships that we are building today, but your slides showed from 2007 to 2012, we already must move into mid-size ships. That means about 150 meters and above. As soon as you cross this size, There are a whole lot of regulations from the design point of view which come in. That requires some special skills. And here are some few skills which we have listed. These are available within the country now, and of course not many organizations within the country have this, but we are fortunate we have built up these capabilities over the years. And all such analysis can be done by us for Indian shipbuilders. Okay. Some issues like predictions. Noise and vibration is, for example, a big issue. If there are problems with noise and vibration, it can be found only during the trials. It's too late. So therefore, we must be able to predict, estimate at the design stage. And we have the facilities for this kind of things, including the shaft alignment, propulsion system vibration analysis, etc. Then compliance checks. These are usually a bottleneck. We can do it on behalf of the administration if it is we have to push for it. But otherwise, we can do a check before submission to administration. That means we will sort of give a compliance approval, and then the administration can do it quickly. Next, please. Also, the design process review. This is something like helping the shipyards design offices to have a proper process for design. We can help in that, setting up such things. Yeah, please. Advisory services are something which is of the general nature. Anything which is not connected in the first 4 or 5 points, but are very relevant for the shipyard design activities, right from the conceptual stage of a design till the fine nitty-gritties, we can be of use. Next slide, please. Now, shipyard facilities and methods. We can give consultancy services, basic issue being cost control and the quality control in terms of layouts, facilities, yard upgradation required, quality assurance schemes, and then we have the quality management systems. We can help the yards set up such things, and also we can certify as per ISO 9000 or whatever. We can also do third-party evaluation for finance purposes. For example, what is the subsidy to be given by the government to the shipyard? This I believe is a problematic issue. But if the industry puts together some proposal, a third party like IRS could get into this business. Of course, we would also like to see that the method is approved once for all. So if there is a standardized method, then one can operate it. These are not traditional businesses of IRS. IRS is not really for these purposes to start with. But as the times come, we have to change, and we are willing to change. In ship construction areas, we can do inspections during the building for quality purposes. We can do shipyards vendors assessments so that the quality of the products which they supply to shipyards are okay. This is the second party inspections also. We can do that as well as the assessment of the vendors. Then a few items which we have lately, we have started doing this already, is measurements on board ships, measurements of noise, vibration, power, stress, strain. These are something sometimes required by the shipyard. One, to prove that the shipyards, what they have produced, the ships are in compliance with the accurate standards. A third party certification is very helpful. More so, from the design data point of view, as you grow bigger, it will be very much required to have your own database which you can use for further orders. So this measurements are very good way of collecting very sophisticated data. Nobody in this world is going to share their data with you so easily. You may buy a design, but the exact parameters of what that design would or has achieved before, you will not get that. So some kind of measurements will be very helpful. We can also help in solving any post-design or post-delivery problems. If there are any problems, how to solve those problems so that the ship meets the agreed contract specifications. These are usually very laborious kind of exercises, but unavoidable. But sometimes we have to be able to do and find a solution. Now, getting people to do all the jobs with so many 30% increase of per year for so many years, that means similar kind of resources you have to get. I mean, though you will get some kind of your productivity increases, man-hours per ton will decrease, still you will have to have at least 20% increase of the manpower every year. Today there is a shortage. Already we start with a negative thing. We have to somehow get these people, and if you don't have enough people in the country, there is going to be a huge poaching job, and of course we will also lose a lot of people if there is a big demand and the salaries go up. But it is not going to solve the industry's problem altogether. As a whole, the problem will persist unless you make some arrangements to provide these people who are trained in the respective areas. Now, one way is, of course, to go to the universities and ask them to take more people and to produce more people. It is going to happen even if you start moving towards that today. The IITs or the QSAT, etc., they will take a couple of years to decide, and then you will get the product only after 4 years. So that means by year 2013-14, you already you have a big constant there. So what to do about this? We have had some experience of this because of our own resource crunch, which we have had very badly a couple of years back, and still, of course, we do have. So one way is to train the existing personnel. So we can help doing that. We can help train shipyard personnel in class requirements. What does classification want? What does the owner want? Next please. Then statutory requirements. This knowledge is very important. You may have other people who have got some basic knowledge about shipbuilding, but if you train them more specifically into some specific areas like this, it will be of great help. Construction processes, some more is UMS and all that. The second bullet, the second bullet is about training engineers from other disciplines and make them more suitable for ship design and ship construction. This is something which we have followed. We have taken, we have employed actually recruited mechanical engineers and civil engineers, structural engineers, some electrical engineers also, and we have trained them in the skills we require them to have to do our kind of job. Similar thing can be done for shipyards. Collectively, we can come together and set up such an institution to teach about ship design or ship construction or marine engineering. And then you will be able to bridge your current shortage which you have. have. We can take a lead in this. We have already operated this scheme for ourselves. 40 engineers graduated last year, and the next batch is also on. We have found it quite useful way of doing things. Maybe I don't know how to. This is something which details which I will see, but the industry together can make a collaborative effort in this area, and we can help. Next slide. So in the summary, I would like to say that we have very good expertise in certain areas, and we are willing to share a range of activities as we discussed. And to remind that these are only a few examples. We are prepared to collaborate with you in any kind of venture which will help you. Yeah, because IRS exists for such purposes. Well, I think that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Sarandar. Now I'd request Sumit to talk about what he has to say, and subsequent to that, you can raise as many questions you wish on the discussions that we have had, and then after that we'll have some sort of a panel discussion where we can discuss. There are some 5 burning topics that we have. One is on the productivity and the technology improvement. Then we have on the human resources side, then on the financing side. So we will take each of these topics as part of a general discussion. But first, Sumit will discuss some of his impressions of the industry and what made him really invest in the sector and what does he think of the sector from a venture capitalist or financing point of view. Yeah. Thanks, Ramesh.
I guess before I dive into the shipbuilding industry, I'll give a brief background about private equity industry in India and how many of you are really familiar with that and what private equity does. First of all, ICICI Venture is one of the oldest private equity funds in India. We roughly manage about $2 billion right now, and we've been in existence since 1988. But as all things have significantly grown in the Indian economy, so has the private equity industry. So last year there were about close to $6 billion of private equity investments in India. Just to give you a sense of proportion, this was almost 65% of the foreign direct investment in India, which was probably about $10–11 billion. So almost 60% of that came from private equity, which is very significant when you compare that with China, because China receives about $60 billion of foreign direct investment, and private equity would probably be about maybe $3 or $4 billion there. So you can see the role that private equity industry is playing in India. It's far more significant that it does in China, for example. Also, the nature of private equity industry is different in India, because globally, if you see, private equity industry is classified into 2 buckets, which is either people do venture capital, which is new technologies, new ideas, new products, things that don't exist. So there is a fairly large private venture capital industry both in Europe and US. Or on the other side, there is something what we call as the buyout industry, where investors buy companies and restructure them and then sell them and make money. Whereas the uniqueness about the Indian private equity industry is that most of it is what we classify as expansion and growth capital. So that really is available to the Indian entrepreneurs as long-term capital available to them, and they can use that to grow their businesses without either selling the businesses or losing control. So it's really a very great source of financing available to companies in variety of industries to grow the businesses and not just be dependent on bank financing or the capital market. As you can see, the capital markets can be very volatile. The IPO performance is good in one quarter, it's not so good in another quarter, and there are a lot of challenges in listing small companies. The investor interest may not be there, and the stock doesn't do well, and then it limits your ability to raise further capital. Because once you do an IPO, then you can raise capital predominantly through the capital market route. Where, though, having said that, in India we also do a lot of private equity does a lot of investment in listed companies, but over a period of time that will significantly reduce. So people need to really think hard how they are financing their project. Are they financing it with too much of debt and risking their project, or are they financing it with means which don't give them a long-term source of capital? In addition to that, as I said, private equity can provide significant pools of capital. Quantum is not an issue. There are investors who can invest from $5 million to $500 million. So really depending upon the nature of the project or nature of investment, people can invest significant portions of capital. The other is, private equity is patient capital. So we are, very happy to be invested in a company for 3 to 5 years. I have personally been involved in companies where we invested for as long as 7 or 8 years. So there's no hurry, there's no urgency. We are business builders, so we like to build good businesses, and we believe if you build a good business, eventually we'll be rewarded and we'll make money. So that's very important that people should think about. The other is the fact that we are involved in a variety of businesses as a part of our job. We are able to leverage those skills to a particular business that we invest in. So, for example, in shipbuilding, as we mentioned that there are a lot of gaps in the industry for the industry. So that could be design capabilities, it could be manpower capability, it could be in terms of building a large ancillary industry around shipbuilding industry. So in some of these situations, we as private equity investors can initiate some of these initiatives, participate in some of these activities, and help the business grow. It could mean that Indian companies have to acquire shipyards overseas to bring in some of those skills, either in terms of manpower or process some of the processes that international shipyards use. So that could be an activity where private equity could play a very important role in helping the industry grow. So it's a form of capital which is not, as we say, it's smart capital, which is not, we just don't provide capital and then hope that somebody will do the job and make money for us. It's a form of capital where we get fairly actively involved in the running of the business, and we partner the management team and help them grow the business. One of the other significant things we do is really help and attract talent. We believe that's critical for all Indian businesses. All Indian businesses are faced with high rates of attrition today. It's difficult to at first attract and then retain talent. We believe in a very strong alignment of interest between the management, the employees, the management, and the shareholders, and we ensure that there are incentives created for everyone to make the company bigger, stronger, and create value. So we have tools available which we've used in a number of companies which help retain and attract talent. The other is really, we believe in very high standards of corporate governance. So, from making sure that the company follows the right accounting policies to company having the right board, company following the the right governance for, I would just say capital markets, but it's really helping build an image of not just the industry but the company as well, and making the business attractive for other investors to come in and participate in the growth of the company, because we believe that that helps in raising even more capital if you need more capital, and also building a certain profile of the company in the image of large institutional investors and capital markets. So these are some of the things that we actively involve ourselves in, and when we invest into a company, and and most of this is done after a very detailed process of due diligence and analysis of the industry and the company that we invest in. So normally any transaction that we do takes about anything between 3 to 6 months, and we believe it gives us time to learn about the industry and the management, and then be ready to add value as soon as we finish making the investment. As far as shipbuilding goes, we believe this is going to be a very large business going forward in India. It clearly has, we clearly see a trend here that Indian shipyards would dominate the world. May not be the largest of the ships, but in a certain segment of small to medium-sized vessels, we believe India would have a significant advantage over the rest. Clearly, the Indian labor cost advantage is quite significant here. We believe India has the companies and the talent to leverage the current boom in the industry and grow in a fashion that India would create its own image in the shipbuilding industry. So we did a very detailed analysis of how this industry will look in the next 15 to 20 years. We believe clearly drivers like global trade is the pace at which it's growing. It's going to continue to grow. The world is flat is becoming more and more true today. We believe the growth in the oil and gas sector will drive demands for rigs and offshore vessels, and that will continue to be a growth driver for quite a few years to come. We don't see oil prices going down to levels where it's not remunerative to invest into rig capacity. So this is where we believe it's clearly at an inflection point where it has a long way to go, and we are entering fairly early days. I think most of the shipyards are small to medium-sized shipyards, and that's again an area where we believe that we add value to these businesses, because the company is very large. Private equity has no value to add. So clearly, small and medium businesses attract private equity from that perspective as well, that we can certainly add value to this industry. Before investing into shipbuilding, we did a Porter 5 forces analysis. It is something which we do for any investment we make, to see how the industry looks from a who has the power, whether the buyer has the power, whether the supplier has the power, what's the threat of substitution, what's the threat of new entrants, and what's the competitive rivalry. And in this regard, we felt kind of shipbuilding fits the bill, though there is threat of new entry is high, probably because of the subsidy scheme that the government has announced, and that will attract a lot of new players. But we believe that will only be good for the industry in the long run, because the more players you have, it will create an ecosystem of shipyards that is very important for the industry to grow. because you need certain significant players. You need India to be known as a shipbuilding nation. For example, in the IT industry, the Infosys and the Wipro and the TCS were not there, or the big boys, we wouldn't have seen the growth that the IT industry is. Because you need large, big players that give confidence to international buyers that yes, we can rely on this country to deliver on the goods. So that, I personally see threat of new entrants as actually a positive thing, and we welcome people like L&T, or there are other big players who want to get into this space. It will only help the industry as a whole. On the buyer power, we see given the current boom, clearly the power is with the shipyards, because they have all the shipyards are probably full till 2009-10, so that's not such a big worry. In terms of supplier power, yes, there are a few large suppliers who exercise a lot of power in this industry, who supply critical equipment for the ships, and that's something which we have to encourage some of these people to either expand capacities or move into India and set up capacities here. I guess once the industry is large enough, we would see some of these players do that. In terms of substitution, we believe there's really no threat to shipping. This industry is, as an industry, it's going to grow. And in terms of competitive rivalry, I guess as the nation builds its image, we believe the margins will increase. Right now, the margins are probably on the lower side, probably because one, subsidy incentive, people don't know how that's going to play out, and that's probably putting pressure on the margins. And maybe people are passing off some of the subsidies to the buyers, which I don't know whether that's really sensible to do that. But over a period of time, as people start delivering ships on time, and I think right now most of the buyers, ship buyers, are really waiting and watching to see how Indian shipyards are going to perform, and I think that's really puts a lot of pressure on the existing shipyards to ensure that they deliver on time, because if people are not going to deliver on time, it's going to give the industry a bad name. So I think that's something people should be very mindful of, and not really go very aggressive and take on too many orders which they can't deliver on. So that people really need to bear in mind. But we see margins would improve in the kind of vessels that India has an advantage, and industry would improve their margins over the next few years, and hopefully the incentive scheme, we don't know whether it will exist in the form or fashion that it is, and if it's not, it will probably be preferable to have maybe a different kind of a status for the industry, or maybe an infrastructure status, or certain export incentives that could come from the government that will help the industry grow. So some of those things, I guess, are open issues at this point in time, which the industry needs to kind of lobby with the government and ensure that there are incentives available to the industry over the next few years. In terms of the why we invested in TEDMA, it's a fairly mid-sized yard as of now. It's much smaller than some of the PSU yards, but it's third largest shipyard in the private sector. But clearly, we believed two things that we specifically liked about TEDMA. One, their focus on the offshore vessels. I think that's an area where our belief is India will do well in the long run. That's a segment of the market which will continue to grow. and the prices would continue